So welcome everybody. My name is Piethein and Sarath. I'm the Chief Data Officer, and I would like to thank you all for participating. We were just joking about the massive size of this room, and Sarath, you told me when we entered that Arun, so the manager from the product group, was first when he was presenting, he was in a room half of the size of this.
Yeah, smaller than this.
So it's quite an opportunity to speak here to so many people. I'm really excited. So we have an agenda fully packed with demos, videos, lots of content. I will introduce myself. So my name is Piethein and Sarath. I'm the Chief Data Officer, and Sarath, we will do it together.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Sharath Shashidharan. I work as a Senior Program Manager in the Fabric product group. So I'm a part of Customer Advisory team, or what we call as CAT. So this has been a big journey, right? So it has been 18 months of work, which our team has been working on Microsoft Fabric. And we are really excited and proud to present you what all we have built. And basically, it's going to be a big ride for you in the next 45 minutes. Thank you.
So we all recognize, I think, that AI is quickly changing the world. We saw all of the announcements earlier today. We saw Aka.ms also talking about this. Lots of cool demos, lots of excitement there. But at the end, what truly matters is the data. And I think we also heard that in the previous session. So garbage in, garbage out. So it's critically important to really get the data well in shape. And in that respect, there's good news and bad news. The good news is that we had massive innovation in the data and AI space. The bad news is that this innovation led to tons of fragmentation when it comes to tools and applications you can use in order to turn your data into value. And this is the landscape of all the applications you can use in that respect for transforming and integrating your data. And every tiny icon represents a service. And the burden is on you to figure out how to glue all of these different services together, how to copy the data between these different services. So when I talk to customers, and I think you already heard this morning, the message we often get is, please unify. I do not want to be the Chief Integration Officer. No, instead, I would like to be the really Chief Data or Chief Innovation Officer. So let me pass it on to you, Sarath.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Yeah, so based on this, this is exactly what we at Microsoft Fabric Engineering Group were intending to do, right? So we were moving from one component into a unified stack. So all your personas, like your data scientists, your data engineers, your business analysts, all of them actually use one single SaaS platform. The second one was from single databases and single warehouses into all your data in one single lake, right? So one single storage layer. That was also a big KPI for us to meet. The third one was basically Gen AI wired in, where you had to manually get things into the product, versus Gen AI built in, which means that all our products which we are building on Microsoft Fabric have been built up, ground up using Gen AI, which is built into our services. With that, we have 4 promises which we have built the whole framework for Fabric on. The first one is a complete analytics platform. So what does it mean? It's one single SaaS platform where all my different personas in your organizations, like your data engineers, your business analysts, data analysts, all of them actually work on single platform, which is fully managed and fully SaaSified. The second pillar which we had, and the second promise which we make, is having a lake-centric and open approach. So what do we mean by lake-centric? It's basically that we are going for what we proudly introduced as one lake. So it's actually a managed storage layer which comes in as one single instance for your whole organization. That's actually what we mean by the lake-centric approach. That's not the only thing. We actually standardized on open source format, which is the Delta Lake format. So that means all our engines which are actually writing into Fabric, they are all writing in the same Delta Lake format. The third one is empower every business user, because you could build a beautiful data platform with all your data in there, which is highly governed and highly regulated, but if that is not actually usable by business, that was a core priority for us to solve. So we made sure that we were designing our systems in such a way that all the connecting tissues between Fabric as well as Office 365 was in from day one when we were designing this product. Last but not the least, the last promise which we had was it is all AI-powered, which means that we have ChatGPT experiences with all the different workloads which are within Fabric. So it's not an afterthought. From the day one of coding, this particularly AI-infused stuff has been in the design for all the different products which we have within Fabric. Next, when we look under the hood, so we have 7 different workloads which are actually built using trusted as well as proven services, right? So proven services like Azure Data Factory, Synapse Analytics, as well as Power BI and Azure Data Explorer. So we have got all of these services together into one single SaaS platform and offering you kind of a seamless experience with that. That said, we are also looking at one lake, which is kind of the heart of this platform where all your data is stored, and we provide you a fully unified cloud storage, which is actually fully managed by the service itself. With that, we are very proud to say that 18 months of hard work has gone into this, and we have gone into general availability. It has been truly an amazing journey. We have 25,000 organizations who have already started playing around with Fabric. We have 2/3 of the S500 companies which have started playing around with Fabric. And we have 87% of companies who have used more than 2 workloads together within Fabric, which shows that whole USP of this particular service is that all of this is used in conjunction to make sure that the integration tax, which Piethein was mentioning about, is actually going away. With that, I'd like to pass it back to Piethein so that we could dive into each of these 4 different promises. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarath. We will do a bit of a tour now. So we will walk by all of these different 4 promises. So I will kick it off. So the first promise is really about delivering you an end-to-end, fully integrated experience. So it's one platform, one storage architecture, and a lot of unification that sits behind it. So everything is unified, everything is SaaSified. Like Sarath already mentioned, so these are the services. So it's one product that all different users within the organization will use. So whether you are a data scientist or a report builder or a data engineer, these will be the experiences you're going to use. All of these will be AI fused. There's a one lake storage architecture also that sits behind it and all integrated with Purview. The one unified system gives you different experiences. So albeit we all know we come from a different background, so there are different personas, different experiences based on what you would like to build or do within the platform. So what I would like to do now is give you a bit of a glance of how things will look like. So let's switch to the demo. Great, I need to unlock it. There we have it. So as you can see, so this all runs in the browser, so it's all software, and this is the landing page. As you can see, it's all software, and here we see the different experiences. So if I click through, well, this is the experience, for instance, previous known as Azure Data Factory, so this is Azure Data Factory. If we move back to the main page, well, for instance, this is Power BI, and here we can start building reports. And the great part is it's truly software, and it's no deployment, no infrastructure. It's just a single click to enable this. So if I would enable this for myself, and I imagine already use Power BI within my organization, it's basically toggling this switch to enable it for myself. Besides that, you also should enable this switch to get access to the paid features. So it's only that. What is else interesting from this admin pane is we can see here, there's a feature called domains, which I'm very enthusiastic about. So imagine you would like to build a data mesh architecture or apply domain orientation to your organization. You can set up domains and align these different domains then to different teams within your organization. So here, for instance, we have the marketing domain, and within we see different environments, different workspaces, are these called production and development. Also, these workspaces we can manage from here. So here you see the overview of all the different workspaces. And also within you see the different capacity units you should purchase. And these capacity units then you can link or mirror to these different workspaces. And this allows for customization. So for instance, if you would like to share all capacity units between development, yes, you can do. But if you would like maybe give teams dedicated capacity units, you can also do that, for instance, for production. Maybe let's have a look at some other things. So this is the experience, for instance, that was previously known as Azure Data Factory. So Data Factory, but now runs within Fabric. And here I've created a small medallion architecture. So taking data from SQL Server, passing that over to Bronze. I launch a bit of notebooks, and then at the end I store all of the data in my gold layer. Next, this was also demonstrated this morning, but here I'm in the Lakehouse environment, and I can query, for instance, my data. Shut up, you. But we can also visually build queries. So say I'm not that experienced in SQL and I would like to build and integrate the logic myself. You can do that by just dragging in tables like we see here. So I have two tables now. Let's combine these, do a join. So for instance, this is the first table. If we zoom down a little bit, select a different table, the other table then. So this is the key I would like to join on. The address key. Let's say I would like to do an inner join, so only the matches. And here you see we have combined that data, again using native experience. What we can also do, for instance, is a notebook. So let's go back to the workspace. Here, more options. Notebook. I'm going to add my lakehouse, so the silver layer in which my clean, nicely modeled data sits in. I'm going to drag that in here, for instance. It's all drag and drop. I'm not writing any code. It takes a while, so 15, 20 seconds usually. And I think the great part here is also that Microsoft managed also the Spark infrastructure. So usually with Synapse or Databricks, for instance, you had to manage and deploy your own infrastructure, and that took a lot of time, so sometimes 5 or 10 minutes even. But now Microsoft manages this for you, so there's no infrastructure, maintenance, or integration anymore. Okay, great, there we have the results. So you see that. And what we can also do from here, so while using the notebook experience, I can start wrangling my data. So this is a wrangling experience within a notebook. The data here will be visualized. All the different tables. It's a bit small, unfortunately. But what I can do, for instance, here, I can format, so say I would like to, where is it? Find and replace, say I would like to find and replace something. I can do that easily. I say the salesperson here, and if we go to the right, where that data, where are you, you little one? Look, so it has adventure work, so I would like to take that out. So you see, it starts now comparing, so I see the old values matched against the transformation I would like to apply. Let's zoom out a little bit. So it takes a bit of time to load. And here we also see the expression built in the notebook. So I can apply this. It takes a little bit too long, but from here you can easily then add that to your notebook and then start comparing. So again, wrangling data without writing any code. So it's a nicely business experience in that respect. This is my last experience I want to show. It's again, it's mapping data flows, Gen 2. Also a bit similar, but here in this experience, I can nicely again wrangle or transform my data using an Excel-like experience. So here, for instance, I could make selections. remove any columns. And after I'm done, I could set a destination and then write it back to SQL Server or store it back in my OneLake experience. So that's about the experience. So let's bring up the slides again. And what we will do now is move to the next promise, and you will take over, Sarath.
Yeah, thank you, Piethein. So thanks for the great demo, Piethein. Now moving on to a second promise, right? So being lake-centric and open. So we discussed this during the first few slides. So let's get in this. So if you look at it, for understanding how Fabric works, right? So we need to dive a bit into the architecture of how it was built, right? So we have one lake, which is kind of your data lake, which belongs to your organization. So there's one lake per organization, which is your company. So under the hood, we take care of provisioning X number of storage accounts so that you don't have to care about throughput issues or configuring these storage accounts and other stuff which you would do for a typical data lake store when you think about Azure data lake storage. So the second thing which we have done there is we made sure that all these applications, right? So when you think about one lake, it's just like one drive for your data. So you think about, for example, you have your OneDrive where you have PowerPoint, you have your SharePoint, your Word, all of that. When it's storing data online, it's storing it into your OneDrive. The same concept applies for OneLake. All the 7 different applications which you see on top, they are all writing into the same lake. That would mean your warehouse or your Kusto databases. You're talking about pipelines doing transformation, writing it. They're all writing into the same single lake for your organization. And that said, it's not only about where the data is stored, right? So the second part is how the data is stored. And that's a very important point for us. So when we designed this, for example, let's say that now you have your data engineering, you have your data science, which is using Spark, for instance. They're writing down into the same OneLake layer. We have MPP designed architecture. That's basically your data warehouse. They are also writing it down into the same OneLake layer. And of course, we have Power BI, which is actually using the analysis services engine, which is also writing the data back into OneLake. The beauty of this is what we have done. That's the change which we have brought about, is all these engines are writing in the same format, which is actually the Delta Lake format. So we have standardized on this, right? And the idea is that that makes the concept of one copy possible. When we say one copy, all these engines are actually using the same copy of data. So if I need to read this data from another engine, which is written from engine 1, I would just use it rather than having to load it into my cache or loading it into my memory and doing stuff. I'm just going to use that data in its native format sitting inside OneLake. So this is a groundbreaking change which we have brought in our data formats. So we will follow this up with a small demo so that you can see how the concept of one copy, as we call it, works in practice. So with this, I'd like to flip into the demo machine, please.
Shall I start?
Yes, yeah. So just a second, Peter. Yeah. So before I go through this, so I'd like to explain the scenario, right? So we are talking about a real-time scenario where we have, for instance, the data of cars which are going through a toll booth. They are coming in real time, right? So the idea is that we are getting this data in real time, and I land it into my OneLake as plain tables, like Delta Lake tables. Second part of the demo would be my data scientist actually going to use that same data, which is coming streaming in through my event hubs, and building a forecasting model on top of it using notebooks, right? That would be point 2. And the third point would basically be a data analyst within your organization who is going to use the data which was created by the data scientist to query the data, right? Using T-SQL, that's SQL. And the fourth part of this demo would be actually creating alerts, real-time alerts based on the sensor data which is coming in, using a brand new product which we have launched within Fabric called as Data Activator. So that's our 7th workload, which also went in with Fabric. So with that, I would like to start the demo. Thanks again. So I'm creating an event stream in there, which is actually this, and what you say that I create a new source where I link it up with event hubs. So that's where my real-time data is coming from the cars which are flowing in. Immediately, I can see the data in there. So I can see the data preview. I can see how it is formed. The next thing is I want to store this into my lakehouse inside Fabric, right? So I want to store the raw data inside a lakehouse into Fabric. And at the same time, I would also like to have a second table, which is aggregated data. And that aggregated data is basically nothing but grouping my cars which are flowing through a particular toll, and that is actually transformation in real time. So you're transforming that data in real time and writing that into a relational table inside your lakehouse, which is ready for querying. And that's it. You can see there, I have my two different data, which is actually stored inside my lakehouse. Next up, my data scientist comes in, opens my notebook, pull, and just, it's in there. The code is generated automatically. Basically, you're just getting the data which you had populated using real-time streams into a forecasting model which you're actually building inside your notebooks. Basically, then the next part is the data scientist doing some feature engineering to look at the data, to look at the columns which would help him to determine what would be the predicted column, right? So to see like, okay, what would be the number of cars which pass through toll number 3 or toll number 4. Beauty of this is written back to one lake, again, our one copy principle, and the same Power BI which you see there, analysis services is reading from that same data set. And as you can see, that's the new table which was created by the data scientist, right? So the data scientist has created the predictions and stored it back as a relational table into this. The fourth up, my data analyst. So my data analyst gets into the SQL endpoint. He's fully aware, or she is fully aware of, for example, T-SQL. You see that it's 14.1, and now it's 14.8 million rows of data, which is actually coming into the lakehouse in real time. And at the same time, basically the data analyst is querying the data, which is actually sitting inside my lakehouse. And this is just based on the real-time predictions. The fourth up, it's alerting, right? So we want to set up a real-time alert saying like, if the number of cars which pass through a particular toll exceeds X number of cars, then I need an alert in real time. So this is done using data activator. So what you see in here is the data activator screen. So you could see that we have 4 different tolls, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you could see the number of cars which are flowing through in this case. Next up, I create my alert, right? So I go and say, like, if the number of cars goes more than 50, and then basically there would be an alert which is raised. And as you can see, it looks at historical data too. So you can look at the historical data and find out how many times this alert was met. Once I do this, the next step, I would just set up my alert. How do I want to send it, right? So I could send an email, or I could send a Teams alert, and this can be done by a business user, right? So immediately, the operational person who is sitting in your toll, in his Teams, he gets the alert saying like, okay, the number of cars which are passing through your toll are exceeding the capacity which you can handle, so you need to do something. So just that, we saw different personas, right? So we saw the SQL persona, we saw the data engineer in there, we saw the data scientist in there, and we also saw the business analysts inside your organization who were all working on the same copy of data. So the beauty of this is we did not use any movement in there to get the data from one engine to the other. It was just the same copy of data being used by all these services within Fabric. So that's up. So I'll go to the next one. Can I flip back to the demos, please?
To the presentation?
Yes, yeah, the presentation, sorry. So can we flick back to the presentation, please? Yes, thank you. Yeah. So the next one, right? So we saw that this was something which we did within Fabric itself. So you would say like, yeah, but my data is not in Fabric. We have just GA'd this service. It's just 2 weeks old. So what would we say? But migrate all your data, start moving into one lake. So that's not something which we like, right? So we like the concept of one copy, which means that we are introducing a second concept, which is also what we are proud of to introduce, called shortcuts. And the idea of shortcuts is that you are able to connect to the data where it sits. It could be on Azure, it could be on AWS, or it could also be on GCP, that's Google Cloud. And the beauty of this is basically we are not copying the data. It's a link. A shortcut is similar to a shortcut on your desktop. So you have desktop, which points to an application on your desktop. That's the same for shortcuts within Fabric. We are creating pointers towards files and folders within your OneLake. That's what we mean by shortcuts. Next up with that, that said, what happens when the data is something which you can't read, right? So we have data which is in Delta Parquet format or Delta Lake format. We have CSV files. We have JPEG files, which are all readable formats for Fabric. But what happens to data when it's not in the readable format? That's basically the data which is stored inside databases, including our own databases, right? So SQL DB or Synapse Data Warehouse, we have our own proprietary formats for storing data, including third-party like Snowflake, right? So basically, the idea is to get that data out into Fabric and make the same experience which you saw in the demo earlier. We are proud to announce that we have gone with public preview for mirroring in Microsoft Fabric. So in the first phase, we are supporting Snowflake. We will support Cosmos DB and SQL databases. So, and going ahead, we will support more and more relational databases in the future. So how does this work? So basically, this is using just a few clicks, which you will see in the demo right now, right? So the next demo which follows is going to show you how we are going to use, for example, a few clicks on how you could kind of combine sources from 5 different types, from your AWS S3 buckets, from Snowflake, and then, of course, our first-party services like Databricks, our dynamic CRM systems to make sure that we are combining all of this data without you having to do all the plumbing of getting the data into OneLake. So can we switch to the demo? Yeah, thank you, please. Yeah. So in this demo, we see 5 different sources, right? So first, we see, for example, we have Snowflake, where all your loyalty data for your customers are stored. The second one, we have Databricks, where you have your sales data, which is stored. And the third one, we have our Dynamics, where the case data is stored. We have order processing data inside Cosmos DB, and we have product portfolio inside S3. So we want to combine all of this data. So the first thing, I would create my lakehouse. It's there. And the first thing I would do is I want to get my data, which is my sales data from Databricks. For that, what I would do, I just go in, create a shortcut on ADLS Gen 2, where Databricks is storing my data. I would do click, click, and I say that my shortcut name is sales. And as you can see, I have all my sales tables from Databricks in this. And you could repeat it for Dataverse, Amazon, S3, all of that inside using this click-click mechanism to get everything in there. It's not only structured data. You can also see images as well as, for example, customer documentation where it is in text form. So it's not only relational data. We also support other formats. But the next one, what do we do for unsupported file formats? That's where we kick in with mirroring, right? So we say that we want to get the data from Snowflake in there. So I would go in there, define my name for my Snowflake mirror. Here, you can just select the connection of Snowflake which you want to use, and you select the database where you have your loyalty tables in there, and that's it. That's it, right? So with this click, it immediately starts copying the data from Snowflake, mirroring the data from Snowflake into Fabric. You can do the same for Cosmos DB. So as you can see, 5 different sources, all of them inside the lakehouse using a simple experience. Next up, your data analyst wants to get in and query all the 5 different sources together. And as you can see, there are 5 different sources being queried together, and you can see the data there. Next up, we go into the lineage view, right? So you see the 5 different sources from where the data is coming, and you see the downstream applications. So one is being used for my inventory forecast, which is a notebook. My data scientist was working on it, and I could see that my business analyst has also used it for creating reports. So next up, I would like to get into the report, right? So let's see. I want to see what the report has. I get into my report, and then I immediately see that this is actually Power BI, and Power BI is using the data which is stored inside my lakehouse using the direct lake mode. So it's not loading any data. This is real-time data. Last but not the least, we see that it's all protected using MIP labels, Microsoft Information Protection, and we use inheritance, which means that any downstream system which is using a sensitivity label, which is highly confidential, it gets all of that inherited. We see Purview Hub, which is basically a governance layer within Fabric. So as you can see the coverage of sensitivity labels within Purview, and that gives, for example, good insights into what your data is, what kind of sensitivity labels are applied to it, and all of that in your single experience. With that, I would like to flip back to the demo, please. The slides, and I'd like to give it back to Piethein on our Better Together story with Databricks.
So a common question I often get, well, I not only use Synapse, but also Databricks. How do these two different services integrate? Well, the great part here is they are both compatible. So they use both underneath the Delta open source Parquet file format. So you can read from Databricks and move that data into Fabric, but also the other way around. And to demonstrate that, let me show you two architectural diagrams. Well, this is the first one. It's a tiny, small medallion architecture. So we see source systems on the left. We ingest the data into bronze. From there, we refine the data, move it into silver, and then we have business user-friendly data that sits in gold. The first approach you could use for such an architecture, so imagine you're already on Databricks, but you would like to leverage Microsoft Fabric, for instance, with Power BI. Well, you can use that shortcutting mechanism Sarath just explained about. So that's on the right-hand side. So you let the architecture more run as is, and you shortcut that data straight into one lake, and then from there you directly use it, for instance, with Power BI. The second approach you could use is, for instance, you could write from Databricks directly into OneLake. OneLake is a tiny abstraction layer that runs on top of ADLS. It shares the same API endpoints. It's compatible in that way. So you can directly write from Databricks into OneLake. The big benefit is there, no shortcut cutting you need to do. These tables will automatically show up in, for instance, in your Power BI experience. That brings us to the third pillar or promise that we would like to discuss. And this is how you could empower your business users. So imagine a situation where you have worked on your data and you have high-quality data that sits in your OneLake architecture. Well, then a typical next step would be is allow your business users to use that data directly. So they would like to drive the insights themselves, make business decisions by using that data. And this is where we have connectivity, so in connecting tissue, it is called, between Microsoft Fabric and Microsoft 365, so Office in that way. And the story here is that we don't ask users to grab data themselves, export it locally. No, we will bring the data towards them. So let's run a small video to show how that really works. Can we have the video, please?
Oh, yeah, sure.
The demo?
Yeah, just a second. I just... No, it's still downloading. Yeah, just a second.
Well, before we play this video, there are a couple of different experiences. The first experience is we will be in Teams, use Power BI, look at the artifacts. Next experience will be PowerPoint, and then the last final experience will be Excel.
Can I start?
Yeah, you can start.
Great.
So we are now in Teams, looking at Power BI. So from here we can see all the artifacts, all the reports. We can look at the details, open them. But we could also navigate to the top, so the OneLake Data Hub, where all the artifacts are promoted, also from different teams, so the different domains in that respect. So then if you scroll down here in this example, you see, again, the details from these different artifacts. We can open that. And next we will look at the report and do some visualization on that. And again, here we can also bring that observability part, so data activator, it is called within Microsoft Fabric, where we can measure, for instance, something within that report. So here we can define a threshold, 80,000 for instance, we set a filter, and then we can signal alerts directly into Teams or via email, so something similar like you already demonstrated, Sarath, in that previous video. So here we see the sharing. Another experience is in PowerPoint, we can also look at live data, so we can build truly data-driven presentations. So like here in this example, so we copy that report in. And the cool part is here, no more taking photos or screenshots and snapping these. No, it's a real live demonstration or presentation of the data that sits in OneLake. So if the data is refreshed or updated in OneLake, you see it immediately being reflected here. And this is another experience. So here we see Excel. Again, we import a Power BI dataset. We see the tables. We can select the different columns. We insert that data into Excel, so in our worksheet. So here we have the visualization, then a live feed again of all that data. And then next what we can do is just use Excel as is. So we can run pivot tables, draw diagrams directly from these live feeds. And again, it's all live data we're looking at. And it also respects the security settings. So it knows what user is using these reports or PowerPoints. So the security is done also automatically in OneLake. I think that's it.
Yeah.
If we can go back to the presentation. So let's move on to the next experience you will talk about. So
yeah,
the
thank you.
AI part.
Yeah, the last promise which we wanted to talk about in building Microsoft Fabric was indeed the AI-powered experience which you have with all our workloads within Fabric, right? So with that, we would say that we are incredibly proud to say that we have announced public preview for Copilot within Microsoft Fabric. And from the start, we have supporting workloads like Power BI. So Power BI is going to support Copilots. We have support for notebooks that would help your data scientists and your data engineers to start generating code. And of course, you have your integration experience, which will be supported using Copilot in Dataflow Gen 2. These are 3 experiences which we will start supporting getting into public preview. That said, it's not available out of the box for everybody today. We are doing phased rollouts based on GPU capacities in each region. So you will expect that by end of March, we should have support for all customers in public preview. So that's basically a phased rollout, which we are doing currently. With that, I would like to switch to the demo machine so that we could do a small demo of what features we have today with Copilot. Yeah, so maybe we can. It's a different demo.
Can we switch to machine 2, please? OK, perfect.
So this is a demo for Copilots, right? So this is my Dataflow Gen 2. And in Dataflow Gen 2, let's say that I would like to start with defining a few data integration prompts. So if you can play the video, Piethein. Yeah. So in here, let's say that I have my data, which is nothing but bike data, which is a rental company in Seattle area. So I would like to say that I want to compute the duration of my trip, right? So that's the only data or prompt which I'm giving to Copilot. Copilot intelligently detects that, OK, there's a start duration and end duration, and the difference of that is basically my duration in seconds. So the next part, I could do more easier stuff like renaming a column. That's also something which works. But at the same time, I could also give more complex prompts, like I need to do a group on different durations, right? And Copilot is going to automatically detect that and create the code which is required to do the grouping based on its own intelligence. The next up, I could convert my temperature to Celsius. And as you can see, the formula which was required for converting from Celsius to degrees has been generated by Copilot itself. So these are things which you can already start doing with Copilot right today. You could filter out values, saying that if it needs to filter out values on rainy days, and basically it looks at the precipitation column and automatically finds out, OK, that's the column which is need to filter this. Next up, we would like to use the same experience in code. So inside my notebook, I can go into my Copilot prompt and say that I would like to look at this data frame, right? Look at this data frame and give me some insights on what could I do with this data. That's it. It automatically gets in there and gives you 5 different recommendations on what you could start doing with your data frame to look at the data and find out, OK, how does it actually look like? The next up, I would say, like, I want to create, for example, like a column chart, so the number of trips per region, and there's code immediately which is generated. I could put it back into my notebook, and bam, I trigger it, and then I could see my visualizations in there. Let's say that this is a column chart, it looks good, but I would like to change this into a histogram, right? So basically a heat map, sorry, rather than a histogram. So I'll say that I want to have a histogram for the same representation, and Copilot comes back with the code which is required for an histogram. Once I look into this, it's an interactive histogram. What I would do is basically I can zoom in, And in certain areas, I can do my analysis to find out there are outliers in my data set, right? So basically, that's it. So you saw how easy it is to actually get in and find out outliers in my data set. Basically, this helps both data scientists as well as people who are trying to learn Python. The next up, I would like to kind of do a forecasting model using Prophet. That's a Facebook library. And as you can see, it has generated all the code, including feature engineering stuff, which is required to do that forecasting model using Prophet of Facebook, right? Next up, I would like to change the way this representation is. Of course, it's in a tabular format, but I would like a line chart to see how the forecasting is done. And Copilot generates that code for me. So it gives me a line chart where I could see, for example, what's the trend happening over time. And last but not the least, I want this to write this data back into my lakehouse, right? So because my data engineers would like to use it, or my business analysts would like to use it, Copilot also generates that data for you to write back into one lake. Next up, my business analyst goes and sees that, okay, now I have my data which is created by my data engineers and data scientists. What can I do with this particular data? So I'd say Copilot suggests content for the report, which I have just created, right? Immediately, Copilot comes back with all the recommendations. Let's say that I want to do a trip forecast. It's working on it, and you will see that this dashboard has been created all by Copilot just by you providing prompts in there. And all of this is actually running on the data copy, which is sitting in one lake. So there's nothing imported into Power BI. It's actually reporting on direct real-time data. The next up, I would say I want to create an additional page with statistics and also for better predictions for station status. And immediately, it takes me to my second page. And as you can see, that from the data, the birth of the data, you did some transformations in Dataflow Gen 2 using Copilot. Then you had your data scientists creating a forecasting model assisted by Copilot. And then at the end, you had Power BI reports, which were all built using the Copilot experience. So this shows you how easy it is to use Copilot to go end-to-end at your customers and basically your organizations to create rapid business value. So with that, I'd like to switch back to the presentation and pass it over to Piethein. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's wrap up. Couple of takeaways. There are lots of sessions, interesting sessions, also from the Global Ignite event. So that's the first block behind me. So visit that link if you would like to know more. If you would like to try it out and you're just as excited as we are, use that link, sign up, and I think it's still for free.
Yes.
60 days? Yes. So we all encourage you to use this experiment and see for yourself how it works. And lastly, so ask your boss. There's a nice event in Las Vegas next year in March, which is the only community event we have on a product, really. This will be in March, so in Las Vegas, so that's the third link. And then lastly, the Microsoft team is really open and transparent on all the work they do. So every month they make available so all the release notes of what they have done weekly. So there are weekly deployments, weekly releases with new features, but all of these new releases are bundled and then written down in the blogs from the Fabric team. And so here you see, for example, so what we have done in August, September, October, and probably lots of more will come. And if you would like to see for yourself, so looking more ahead of time, so what will come the next months, and there's lots of exciting stuff there. So please use this link, so the Fabric roadmap, which is open and also transparent. That brings us to an end. Thank you very much.
Thank you.